but also like the Joker.
What it
all
do,
right.
baby?
Ready to go? All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spurs Up. Now, for the first time this semester, Deric and I are back on the stand. We let our new kids come in and see how they would do in some interviews, so it's nice to be back.
I enjoy Lawrence, but it's nothing like being back with my guy Jack here. I'm glad that we're back and I'm ready to get into this show.
Of course. Now we've got a Gamecock athletic rundown for you today. So starting off, we've got one of the more successful teams in South Carolina sports, our women's soccer team. Now they beat Bama 5-2 on Tuesday. That was at Alabama. They're 8-1 in the conference, and they're 8-1 overall, and they're 2-0 in the conference. Now they're at Missouri tonight for another SEC matchup. And then Sunday, they host number 13 Arkansas for their first top 25 matchup of the season. So that'll be exciting.
I think, like you said, they're one of the more prevalent teams. Not to down the men's soccer team, unfortunately, who lost to UCF last Sunday, but they're playing at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte tonight at 7, and they host PC Tuesday at 7. They're 4-3 overall, and they're 0-1 in conference play. We're looking forward to them coming out here tonight and making a good stand, and hopefully they'll set the tone for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and more often than not in the past couple years, the men's soccer team has been able to kind of pick it up in the later half of the season. So hopefully they'll continue that trend and gain some success as the season goes on.
I think it's safe to say that the men's soccer team, they embrace the marathon aspect of sports more so than the sprinting aspect of sports.
That's fair, as soccer players often do.
Right.
All right, and next we've got women's volleyball. They are 8-4. They've had a 3-match winning streak. They beat Kennesaw State and High Point last Sunday. And now they've got their first SEC matchup tonight at 7 p.m. And then they're hosting Auburn Sunday at 1:30. So, the women's volleyball team is kind of going on a hot streak. And now that they are, obviously, it wasn't in conference play, but hopefully that momentum will push them into success going into conference play.
The momentum and Gamecock Jesus, who always tends to show up at the volleyball games, home or away. So let's hope for the best with them against Auburn on Sunday. Moving over to the baseball team, there's a scrimmage at North Carolina State on Sunday at 2. Now, we know that our baseball program has a very great and rich history here, and so hopefully, that Sunday game will be more of the same for them.
And I imagine Coach Tanner will be making the trip out with him to see his old alma mater.
Good old ball
team.
coach.
And last but certainly not least, even though these teams aren't in the season, they still are doing things throughout the year. So there's a joint basketball tip-off event with the men and women's basketball team October 18th on Hampton Street at Boyd Plaza. So if you want to take a trip out to there and see what the teams have in store for us coming up.
And it gives you a chance to look at the new recruiting class and the new freshmen that are coming in. We also have some transfers. Seven Woods is one of them. Even though he's inactive this season, he still will probably be out there. So it's a good chance for everybody to just kind of meet and greet with the players of the teams. So that's going to be on October 18th, and hopefully you guys will be able to make it out there.
That'll be a very fun event for all the fans and for the players themselves. All right, now moving on to our main focus for today. Obviously, in the fall, you got to talk about it, is our football team. Now, Gamecocks lost their last matchup at Missouri this past week. I believe there was at least 2 or 3 defensive touchdowns for the Tigers. And it did not seem to be like anyone on the team had any sort of chemistry with each other.
It's interesting. Our last guest, David Jackson, we talked off camera briefly about just football in general. And one of the things that we talked about was the Alabama game being momentum into the Missouri game. And the play that we exhibited in the Alabama game was you played to the level of competition and they stepped up. Helinski played great. The offense actually had a very good game. The defense, of course, is going to do what they do. However, with that loss and just a couple of calls not going our way, that takes the air out of your balloon going into that next week. And I feel like if they win that game in Alabama, then we have a different performance in the Missouri game.
100%. And I think it's tough because you never want to put all the blame on a quarterback. But I got to say it, Helinski looked like a deer in headlights. I mean, especially, and it's for lack of better words, but the rookie mistake of catching the tip pass and thinking that if he spiked the ball, that he'd be a dead play, which it wasn't, and it turned into a fumble and a scoop and score, and that's just mistakes that you cannot afford to make, especially when you're playing a mid-level SEC team.
Well, in the SEC, everybody knows in the SEC there's really little to no room for error. You have such heavy hitters. Missouri's going to be one of those teams that I think may show up towards playoff time. And so, like you said, with Helinski being such a young quarterback, we really have no room for error, and he's going to have to step up to that learning curve quick. These are mistakes that, maybe in a non-conference game, that's okay, but even still, he's going to have to step up to that learning curve, and he's going to have to do it fast.
Now, to be fair, I think that he has the ability to upgrade on what he has done. I mean, Jake's first game as a freshman, or his first away game, was against Florida at the Swamp. He did just about as good as anyone expected to, and we still lost that game. So there is room for improvement. I said a couple weeks back that you could not accurately judge Helinski until these 2 games, because if you want, unless he lost against Charleston Southern.
Well, yeah, it's easy to get up for that big game.
Yeah,
it's the game after that you want to really pay attention to, because those are the ones where you're going to be a little less cautious, if that's the right word to use. You're gonna get a little more comfortable, and so in those situations, that's when you know whether or not you have a solid quarterback that's going to be able to do the right things when the pressure isn't as heavy.
Definitely. And so hosting Kentucky is going to be his first game under the lights, and that's a big difference. I mean, we knew with Bentley that his performance when we were not under the lights and it wasn't prime time compared to when we were was completely different.
And these are Saturday night lights, so that's a totally different environment. Kentucky gives us such a struggle every year. We haven't won in 5 years.
We have not.
Haven't won in 5 years. Jake Bentley threw, I think, 3 interceptions the last time they played.
Do that.
We always have a rough go of it when we play Kentucky. So Helinski's going to have to be flawless in this game. The defense is going to step up and do what they do. We have a solid front 7, and I honestly think that it's going to be a matter of offensive output in this game. I don't really think the defense is going to pose any issues or pose any faults or flaws. But what our offense is able to do, or what our running game is able to do, is going to be a big determining factor on whether or not we were able to come out and win this game on Saturday.
No, it's interesting that you say that. I think the running game is going to play a huge part. Because don't get me wrong, Brian Edwards, he's had 2 over 100-yard receiving games in the past 3 weeks. So I think if Helinski can keep getting the ball to him, keep getting his ball to the safety target, that's going to help out. But I think, as you were saying, the defense is playing very well. Even against Missouri, they were playing fairly well. Missouri only had 1 offensive touchdown and a couple field goals.
They only ran for 75 yards overall in the entire game.
The problem is that if the offense cannot perform and they can't stay on the field, as we were saying earlier, the defense is going to start to fall through. They're going to start to lose some steam. So I think the key to this game is going to be, in my mind, trying to revitalize that run game.
I mean, keeping your defense off the field.
And that's how you sustain long drives. Right. You get the ball, you get the clock running. Last week, Rico only had 8 rushes for 17 yards. That is unexcusable for a team that has relied so heavily in the past couple weeks on trying to get the drives moving. So I think that one of the biggest things they got to do is make sure that they can accumulate these long drives, keep the clock rolling, keep the defense off the field, and keep Kentucky off the field. But other than that, what keys do you see?
So I think the key for this game, like I said, is really going to be keeping your defense off the field. How does that happen? You have to strategize. Your offensive line strategy has to be almost to the point where everybody's moving on one accord, to the where Rico can just find those gaps, hit the gaps, and maybe even on sweeps, they have good protection on the east-west play, because that's going to be the only way they move the ball consistently, and being able to switch between the pass-run game. You have to have a run game to be able to switch between the run-pass type offense. So in order to keep that defense off the field, we're going to have to enhance our run play, and that's going to come from the offensive line.
Definitely. It's going to be I think it's going to be a fair matchup. I don't think it's going to be that high scoring of an affair. Helinski had a little bit of elbow issues last week, but that is nothing to be concerned about, as Muschamp said in his press conference earlier this week. So keep an eye on that. I know that fans are going to be scrambling for a win in any capacity, especially over Kentucky, and especially trying to stay on the bowl game path.
We need a win. We need a number in the W column. Come on, Gamecocks. Let's bring it home this Saturday.
All right, and that's all we got for you today in the studio. So until next time, South Carolina, Spurs up.